Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Nancy Furness, and this is We've Got Issues. Our interview today is taking place at Coquitlam Public Library, and we are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded lands of the Coquitlam First Nation. So I'd like to thank the Coquitlam people who continue to live on these lands and to protect the lands and the waters and all that lies above and below. Today, I'm joined by Dwight Yochim, and Dwight has a long history with Coquitlam Search and Rescue and BC Search and Rescue Association. So Dwight has made it clear to us that he is not speaking on behalf of either of those organizations, but he's very kindly agreed to share with us some of his experience and knowledge about both of those groups. So thank you so much for joining us today, Dwight.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
If we can start, just maybe start at the beginning of your story and tell us what inspired you to get into search and rescue. I would imagine love to be outdoors, but maybe you could give us a little bit more of a background?
Sure. Yeah, I've always enjoyed the outdoors, and I actually moved from Saskatchewan to BC to get into forestry. And I happened to have a fantastic job with Greater Vancouver, now called Metro Vancouver, working in the watersheds. And a lot of searches end up in the watersheds of Metro Vancouver. And I hear about them on the news, and I thought I'd like to be able to offer my expertise, my experience in the outdoors and being able to read maps and travel through the forest. And then one day I'm reading the local paper, I think it was the Tri-City News, and they're advertising for people who are interested. That goes back probably a little over 30 years ago, and I applied and got onto the local search and rescue team.
That's awesome. And I think probably in the 30 years that have passed, you've probably seen a lot of change within the area that you're working. Can you tell us a little bit about what are the boundaries? Like, what area was Coquitlam Search and Rescue responsible for? And a little bit about the terrain.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It is actually a fairly big area for Coquitlam. On the west side is Indian Arm. On the east side you have Pitt Lake. It covers Burnaby, New West, Coquitlam, the Tri-City area, and then it goes halfway to Whistler, and you've got Squamish and Lillooet. So if we share the northern boundaries. It's fairly a significant amount of space that it covers.
That's a huge area because you've got such a varied terrain. You've got mountains, you've got some real wilderness there, as you said, waterways, and urban areas as well, right?
It covers the whole gamut of terrain. You've got some of the highest snowpack is on Burke Mountain compared to the North Shore Mountains. You get more snow on Burke Mountain. There's glaciers. You've got Coquitlam Lake, rivers. It's quite the terrain. And then there's the urban areas where the team does a lot of searching as well.
I'm really interested, first of all, that Burke Mountain has such a high snowpack. I had no idea. I would have assumed it would be the North Shore Mountains. But can you maybe share with us a couple of stories about rescues that you have undertaken, a couple of different types?
Yeah, so I was fairly lucky early on in my career to be involved in a lot of searches, and then quickly was asked to become a search manager for Coquitlam Search and Rescue. So we did some pretty amazing searches there now, I believe averaging about 50 a year. So pretty busy team.
1 a week at least.
Yep. Pretty busy team in the province. And there's some memorable searches that we've done. One of the very first searches I did was for 3 young ladies in Minnetonka Park. And it was around Christmas time. They hadn't returned. It was pitch black. It was about midnight when we got the call. And so I went out. The RCMP came out as well. We always work under the authority of the local police. They brought their police dog out. And we headed out, and our first call, we heard the 3 ladies call back. And the frustrating thing is there's a high knoll and a low knoll, I call it in Minnetonka.
Yes.
And when you went around, you couldn't hear them. and then you come back out and you could hear them, and you went around and you couldn't hear them, and so we couldn't tell which one they were on, and so we split up, and I went straight up the high
You
knoll.
take the low road.
And yeah, someone went up the low knoll, and it's quite a scramble. There's a lot of cliffs, and I went up and poked my head up, and there they are sitting there. They got trapped by darkness, and were cold, and radioed back to the command that we found them. So that was one of my first searches where.
And that's interesting because that terrain, like High Knoll, is quite cliffy, and you could get in trouble there at night, right?
Yeah, well, when I saw it in daytime and I realized where I'd come up, it was like, yeah, that was a little sketchy. But there's a lot of times you could be on the team for 10, 15, 20 years and never be part of the team that finds the subject. I've been very lucky to be involved in a lot of finds, but every individual on the team is key to that team being successful.
So they're all volunteers, and so they would have to get permission from their work to leave just at short notice, and is there training?
Yeah, so if you're a ground search and rescue volunteer, you have to, there's minimum standards you have to follow. And you have to meet those standards, first aid, ground search rescue course that you have to take. You have to have swift water awareness and that kind of thing. And the reason we search and rescue in Coquitlam has about 50 volunteers. And what you want is when you get a call as a search manager, you want to have a core number of people be able to respond. And when I was on the team, that was about 12. So I knew if I got 12 people out, I could get field teams into the field. If I had to split them up and do 2 or 3 field teams, I could do it. And so out of 50, you're almost always guaranteed to get 12.
And this is all the way throughout the whole boundary. Do most people live in the Coquitlam area, or are you spread out?
They are quite spread out. There's some that are in North Van, some in Vancouver. That's not a bad thing because you don't want everyone to show up at one time. And so as a search manager, you're always planning, you're always getting new information. And so if a couple of people come in a little later, there's always something else that you can get them to do because you've got new information. Maybe a trail hasn't been covered or something else going on. So it helps you kind of get everything going, and there's not a lot of people standing around and waiting.
And you said you partner with the RCMP or with the police when you get a call like that. What is their role as compared to yours? They're not actually out there searching, are they?
No, but they are the requesting agency. So a missing person comes into the police, and it comes in usually through 911. A family calls, or the subject themselves may have called. They're trapped by darkness or something. Right. And so you work under the authority of the police. You're working for the police.
Okay.
And so they're the ones who have the missing file. If it's an injured subject, you might be working for the BC ambulance service. And if it's a body recovery, it might be the coroner. And so you're always working for an agency, helping them do their job.
Right. And are there urban search and rescues that you're involved in with as well?
Yeah, most of those are sometimes they're missing children.
Okay.
And
that makes sense.
Quite often they're Alzheimer's subjects with dementia, and those are by far and away the most difficult.
Because they're unpredictable, you just don't know where they're going to be, or
because you're in an urban environment, there's so many avenues to move. Walking, even though they say grandma can only walk 200 meters, I found them 7 kilometers away still walking, and they just put their head down and they start walking and they keep walking, or they'll get in a taxi, and we found in Stanley Park. No idea how they got there, but they get in a taxi and they just stop and they get out. And so, there's a lost fare. He's got no money. They've been on SkyTrain. They've been on buses. And the more difficult ones are when they get into the forest. And if they get trapped, the confusion.
They can't find their way out.
And they just stop. And they will sit there forever.
Well, and I guess for search and rescue too, you would have to have some sort of training or know how to handle or manage those people when you actually do find them.
Yes, one of the things I did with when I was working for BC Search and Rescue Association is we partnered with the Alzheimer's Society of BC, And so they did some training for us how to talk to dementia subjects if you find them, how to, because they get confused, they get scared. We do interviews, regardless of what the subject is. We'll bring in a family member, we'll interview them. It's really important for a SAR manager to know what kind of subject you're looking for. And a lot of times the family won't open up to the police as much as they will to us.
Okay, right.
And so we've got there's a whole science behind search and rescue. We use Dr. Kester's missing person data, and
Which is like,
it's a whole collection of information of missing people, broken down into about a dozen or 15 different categories, like hiker, dementia, some despondent, and it changes your entire approach to how you look for the individual.
so you have to be very fit. You also have to have a mind for psychology. It's a very interesting area to be in. So, Dwight, can you give us some tips? Well, there's a lot of hikers in this area. We live in a beautiful area. Lots of people like to get out. Can you tell us some tips how we can hike safely and how we can maybe make your job or search and rescue's job easier?
Yeah, one of the biggest programs we have is called Adventure Smart, and it's actually gone nationwide. Was set up here in British Columbia. Even New Zealand is using it. And it's all about what you can do as a hiker or outdoor adventurer to reduce your risk of going missing. And if you get injured or get lost, what to do to help yourself. And some of the simple things are leaving a trip plan, and that's telling. And you can download it if you Google Adventure Smart or BC Adventure Smart. There's a website on bcsara.com that links you to it. You download a trip plan. There's an app even, and you tell where you're going, what's your destination, what trail you're going to be on, what you're bringing, and you leave
when you expect to be back.
And that's the key, is you leave it with someone that you can trust. And you say, I'm going to be back at 5 o'clock. If I'm not, this is what you do. And you always call 911. Either the individual that you left the trip plan with, or if you have cell phone coverage, you can call 911, and they will get things rolling. And it's important to bring, we used to call it the 10 essentials, but it depends on the time of year and everything. But you need to bring essentials to help you in case you get lost or injured. And a lot of people say, well, it's heavy, and just am I ever
going to slow me down?
Am I ever going to need it?
Yeah.
And my answer is, I hope not. But if you twist an ankle in these mountains today, and you're 2, 3, 4 hours up the trail, it's going to take 2 or 3, 4 hours for search and rescue to get to you. And it might be the middle of the night, and you're either going to be comfortable because you brought those essentials, or you're going to be very uncomfortable. And it's things like, a tarp, extra clothing, a little bit of food, some water. Do you have a map of the area, a compass, a flashlight? So one of the funny stories, just a couple of years ago, 3 adults decided to go hiking to watch the sunset, and were amazed at how dark it got. None of them had a flashlight.
Oh dear,
and
that
now
happens when the sun goes down.
Now they're at the top of this mountain, the sun goes down, and they turn around, and it's dark.
Wow.
And so the search and rescue had to go up and bring these three people down. And so every once in a while, you got to chuckle to yourself. It's like...
Well, luckily it's a happy ending, but I agree, like that. Yeah, you do have to kind of shake your head a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. So there's lots of tips and hints on the Adventure Smart website, and on things you can do to make sure you're safe. Things like checking the weather, looking at the avalanche risk right now, making sure if you're going into avalanche area, and there's no ski mountains around here. If you look at in the Tri-City area, and you get up into the mountains, there's a lot of steep area with snow that does avalanche.
Well, and you were just talking about Burke Mountain and the snowpack up there.
Yeah. So if you don't know you're traveling through avalanche terrain, you're going to be in danger. And a lot of people, snowshoers are some of the biggest subjects and they don't realize that when they're walking along the ridge, you're probably in the worst
Right.
terrain, because that ridge will
Collapse.
let go. Yeah. So just knowing what's going on, and doing a bit of research, and traveling with other people, and if you're in that avalanche terrain, do you have a beacon? There's training on doing that. Does your partner have a beacon, and do you have snow shovels and probes? You may never have to use it, but I'll tell you, if a search and rescue gets a call for an avalanche recovery, it's a recovery. It's not a rescue. You have about 15 minutes to find your partner, and search and rescue is coming in. They'll do their best, but it's a challenging one to do.
And I've heard that when that snow comes down, it's like concrete. Sometimes it's if you don't have the tools and you don't have a partner with the tools, it's
That's
almost
it.
impossible.
And that's exactly why you are your best source of rescue in that situation. And so having the training to know when you're going into terrain and that kind of thing, it's all about prevention, and just making sure that you know and you're ready to do what you're traveling out there to do.
Well, thank you for those tips. Good advice to go by for sure.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned BCSARA, Search and Rescue Association, and you had a lot of experience as a manager with Coquitlam Search and Rescue, and then you moved on to the BC level. Can you talk a little bit about what your role was there and how your role was different there than it was for the Coquitlam Search and Rescue?
Yeah, so with Coquitlam, I was a volunteer. I was a volunteer for almost 25 years with Coquitlam Search and Rescue, and I always said, if there's ever a paid job in search and rescue, I'm going to try for it. And then
Put all your experience.
yeah, and I've got 30 years experience working for nonprofits, and this came up, and I thought it'd be a really good fit. So I put in my name, and so I was the CEO for BC Search and Rescue Association. We had
That's all of BC.
all of BC. So the BC Search and Rescue Association represents the 78 search and rescue teams in the province and some 3,400 volunteers. And we get $6 million from the province each year. Most of that goes to the teams, and we help support the teams to be task ready. Do they have the training? Do they have the equipment? The number of people they need for that particular area?
Right. And do you ever have teams going from one area to help a team in another area?
The strength about search and rescue in BC is because we're all trained to the same standard. We do a ton of mutual aid, and there's sometimes searches get really big. The biggest search I ran was in Surrey, and we had about 1,800 volunteers one day.
Wow, that's a lot of people to be managing.
Yeah.
When you were with BCSARA, you identified that there were some challenges that were emerging. Can you talk a little bit, can you share something about that with us, and what the challenges were and how they affected the job that you were trying to do?
Yeah, it was, so we have a very close relationship with the province, the EMBC, Emergency Management, British Columbia.
That's
And
a
fairly new ministry. It's just over a year old, but been working with the government for a number of years. BCSARA has been around for just over 20 years. The province has been involved that entire time. But over that last year, it seemed like things really changed. The bureaucracy was trying to take more control over search and rescue. There were strange things that would happen. If you look at search and rescue in the province today, the entire structure, everything, is built almost entirely by the volunteers.
Okay,
Very,
so the people who are on the ground.
they are the subject matter experts. There's very few provincial fingerprints on any of that. You look at search management was all designed by volunteers. You look at helicopter long-line rescue was brought in by volunteers. The night helicopter was brought in by volunteers. Everything was
Well,
designed.
I think there's a high level of trust and credibility with the search and rescue teams, right?
Yeah.
Like that we look to them the same way as we look to firemen.
Yeah, yeah, they're doing this year. They're going to be probably close to 1,700 tasks this year. In 2022, they did about 1,500. They saved 1,000 lives in
And no charge for this.
no charge. Yeah, yeah, and 24/7, 365 days a year. The call comes in, they went out.
That's pretty amazing. So what changed with that? Like, so how did how did that role become more difficult?
So you had some new staff with EMCR, and there'd be times where they would some of the commitments you had in the contract is to do major reports, and they would
So
say,
you
well,
have a contract?
yep,
that-
it's called a contribution agreement,
Okay.
and in that contribution agreement you say over the next 3 years these are some of the things that we want you to do, and so you're working on trying to get the stuff done, and they'd say we'd like to see a draft. It's like, well, not done
Not
yet.
quite there yet?
Yeah, it's not nearly in a place where I can share a draft with you, but you'll get it on time.
Right.
And they didn't seem to like that, and you know, they start calling board members and interfering in how we were operating as an organization. And I don't know how many times I was threatened to have the funding pulled, and it's like,
Funding pulled from search and rescue?
yeah. Yeah, even though the staff there had no authority. It's like, well, if you're late on a contract, if you don't comply, you're risking your fundings. Like, you know, it just became so intimidating. It was just not a pleasant place to work anymore.
Well, and I think a situation like you're in, that relationships are important, right? To build those and not to be,
Yeah.
and to learn from experience,
Yeah.
right? So, were those concerns taken seriously, or were they shared at
Well,
that time?
I did make sure that the premier and the minister were aware of them about a month ago. And there's some other things that were going on. Like we have a really good partnership with PEP Air. They're our air support. And so if
So emergency preparedness,
Yeah, so-
provincial emergency preparedness?
that's the old term for the provincial, and so PEP Air kept the PEP at the end of it, and so they have planes. They're volunteers like us, but they brought to the table some amazing tools. They've got state-of-the-art drones. These are it takes 2 operators, one for the camera, one for the drone. Can do night vision,
Wow.
infrared. You can tell it to do a pattern. It can beam the video back to command, and it's
That
impressive.
changes the
Yeah,
face
and-
of search and rescue a little.
Oh, night and day. And it has video scanning software. So you take the software and you put your video from the drone in, and it can find unusual things on the ground, like that
Anomalies.
color scarf. It'll say, look for that color scarf, or just odd things.
Interesting.
And it'll geolocate those, and you can send the drone back out and zoom in on it and see if it's something of interest. And the nice thing about them is they're pilots, and they are one of the only pilots I know with a drone that are licensed to go beyond line of sight. Most drone operators,
Right, you have to keep it
in sight.
Right.
They can go beyond line of sight, and that's significant for search and rescue.
Well, that's a really important partnership to keep then.
Yeah.
It sounds like with technology changing and advancing as well.
Yeah.
It's like,
But they also have another piece of equipment called an Artemis, federally regulated. They've got all the licensing for it. It cost about $300,000.
wow.
They put it in a plane, and your cell phone, they can turn your cell phone into a beacon. So if you're on the back side of Burke Mountain and there's no cell phone communication, they are able to fly over and geolocate your cell phone. And so it's an amazing tool that we can use because everyone's carrying a cell phone these days. And so we have an advisory council with BCSARA, has the RCMP, Municipal Police, BC Ambulance Service, 12 SAR managers or SAR specialists from around the province. They're called regional directors. They all endorse this. I sent it to our partners with Emergency Management BC, and the response is, why are you working on this? We don't pay you to do this kind of stuff. And it was just the reaction was so strange. Unexpected, yeah. And so they call my board and say, why is Dwight doing this? And so here you got life-saving tools that cost nothing.
Right.
They're
Right.
available.
People already have them.
They're available today,
Yeah.
and we had to come up with ways to work around our provincial partners so that the police could activate it through the Joint Rescue Coordination Center and get the tool out. And while EMCR dragged their feet, it was frustrating.
Okay, so I know you're not speaking on behalf of BCSARA, but can you, in your opinion, tell us is there a path forward? Is there something that can be done to change that or to improve that?
It's part of what I'm trying to do now. I've been working with a lot of senior SAR volunteers in the province. We raised the awareness with the Premier and the Minister about the actions of their staff to make sure that they were aware of what was going on. And we're still in that discussion. Several of these individuals have had several meetings with Minister Ma. There's some progress being made. And so the other upsetting thing is, so BCSARA had concerns about some of the training standards of some of the groups around the province.
So the BCSARA, not the government, the BCSARA had concerns.
Yeah, and so we asked EMBC to investigate it and to audit it, and they agreed to. And so for 2 years we asked them, have you done this? Nope, no, it's coming, haven't done it yet, nope.
The wheels turn slowly?
Well, apparently they had already turned, and I accidentally found out they had done an audit and that they had found some serious safety concerns, hid it from us for at least a year. And when I found out, their response was not one of concern about the audit, but how I found out. And it's like, well, we've got some concerns about how you found this out. It's like, well, does that matter?
But what about the audit results and making improvements?
Exactly.
There?
And here I'm concerned about the safety of our volunteers, the safety of the subjects, and they're more concerned about how I found out. And so that's one I'm really trying to push with the minister. We need to have this addressed and make sure that the standards are being met. And it's unfortunate this particular capability has dire consequence if you're not doing it properly. So those are some of the challenges I had to face, and it became like, it was like batting your head against a brick wall sometimes. Like, why is this so difficult?
Well, it sounds though like there are talks happening, and that hopefully there will be some forward motion on this. And we'll check. We'll keep in touch and check on this and make sure that hopefully it comes to resolution. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us?
I had an opportunity. Part of my role as a CEO is to reach out, and so I had monthly calls with my counterparts in Alberta and back east. There's only a couple of provincial associations that have staff. That was really constructive. I also had several calls with U.S. search and rescue associations, but the one that I remember the most is New Zealand. And,
New Zealand
and what was interesting is New Zealand came here to find out how we did stuff.
Really?
And they interviewed everyone, and they looked at their structure. The one thing they did different is they made sure that government did not get involved in setting standards. All they did is provide the volunteers with the funding. And I had the Senior Secretariat for Search and Rescue, so as high up as you can go in the bureaucracy in New Zealand, join a webinar we had. And he was asked, what are the training standards for your ground search and rescue? And he kind of gave a little laugh and he goes, I don't know. They're the subject matter experts. They're the ones who set the standards. They know how to do things safely. I trust them.
So are you suggesting perhaps the New Zealand model might work here?
There's two things I'm suggesting. I've never heard that level of respect here in BC of the volunteers. I mean, it was so amazing to hear that from a government organization about how respectful they are, the volunteers. And the fact that New Zealand came here and the biggest change they made is to keep the government out of setting standards. I think that might be a way for us to look at going forward. These are subject matter experts. In 2022, they put in 440,000 hours at least.
Wow.
Who knows search and rescue better than these guys and girls? And it's humbling to work with these people. I used to be in it, and then now that I was the hired gun and outside it, and I looked at what these members did, it is so humbling to see the dedication. And what they do is they go, okay, how did that search go? What worked and what didn't work? And they debrief and they go, well, how do we make that better? And so they're constantly tweaking and improving. And if you've got an organization above you going, no, you can't do that. No, you can't add that tool. You can't do this. it just stifles everything. And they're always looking for ways to improve. How do we make this better, more efficient? There's 2 volunteers that have used their skills in software. One guy developed a tool that I can text you a link, and all you have to do in your phone is click the link, and it sends me your GPS location. And
Wow.
it's
And this is one of the people in your
one of the volunteers
under
that developed that. Because what we used to have to do is have a list of phones, and then we would phone the subject and go, okay, this is what you click. No, click here. What's your model phone? No, hey, click over there.
No, not that one.
And so we got rid of that, and he designed the software.
Very
And
simple.
and then there's another volunteer who said, we need SAR management software. And so he started to develop SAR management software. So almost every team in the province uses this SAR management software. You carry your phone, you beep in, it signs you in automatically. The SAR manager knows who's in. You know what skills that individual has. You sign them out.
Goes right into a database.
Goes right into a database, right into the system. It tracks how many hours that person's been in, what his assignment was, what team he was with. When he comes out, he beeps himself out. It just makes everything so efficient, and it's all linked to either you're carrying your cell phone or a radio. I can GPS locate you everywhere you go on your task, and it appears on a map in my truck.
Wow, it's so streamlined. Dwight, I just really want to thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, I've learned a ton about search and rescue, and I think it is a very well respected organization, and we thank you sincerely for all the work that they've done and that you've done for the past 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And I hope this isn't the last that we'll see of you. I hope we can keep in touch and talk again, and we'll look for some resolutions and hope that we can move forward on this. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Following our interview, we reached out to Bowen Ma, the Minister of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, and she provided this statement to us. Search and rescue volunteers play a critical role in providing life-saving services across the province, and we deeply respect and appreciate their training, knowledge, and dedication. I have met directly with ground search and rescue groups and volunteers and have heard their concerns loud and clear. In my discussions with the BC Search and Rescue Association, we reaffirmed our shared commitment to effective search and rescue services delivered by well-supported search and rescue volunteers. My ministry has since taken steps in a positive direction to resolve key concerns based on their feedback. Work is underway to complete a needs assessment for new capabilities, such as special training or equipment, and we are accepting requests for new capabilities where a significant public safety risk is identified. Additionally, we have removed the deadline for the GSAR groups to register as a public safety provider. Together, I am confident that we are on the right path to reestablishing the trust and effective collaborative relationships that British Columbians need and expect. So, Dwight, when I shared this statement with you, you expressed that you still had some concerns that had not been addressed. Can you share with us what those concerns are?
Yeah, so I did find out after, and it's after this statement, that EMCR staff has met with the British Columbia Search and Rescue Association on the one concern about the safety audit training that they did. And the staff member did not release the audit to BCSARA. Instead, what he did is he brought in 2 individuals who knew nothing about the capability that was audited and presented to them that it was simply a matter of record keeping, and it could not be further from the truth. It would be like a pilot of a jet airplane having to recertify and deciding that I'm going to use my PC and my flight simulator, and I'm going to use that for my training and put that in the records, and then I'm going to fly my passenger jet tomorrow. Doing something on a simulator or inside a building is not even close to doing something in real-life practical training. And it is so disingenuous that EMCR hasn't addressed the safety concern yet. They have not released the training audit. I've actually had to file a Freedom of Information request to try and get it released. If they really did respect the SARA volunteers and the people they rescued, they would have released that training audit to BCSARA so that the issues found could be addressed.
Right, so it's not just a record-keeping issue that we're talking about here. BC Search and Rescue carries out 1,000 rescues per year. So can you tell us what needs to be done? Like, how would you like to see this resolved?
Yeah, actually, they're in 2023, they probably would have done about 1,700 rescues.
Wow.
And saved about 1,000 lives. So it's pretty significant. That's about 4.4 billion in social value saved for the province. It's the best value that the province could get. And so there's a couple of things that the province could do right away.
Right.
Release the audit. Let BCSARA see the audit and let them address the issues that are found in there so that everyone can be comfortable that the findings in that audit can be addressed. And any teams who are deficient can make sure that they're doing the right training. Simple, straightforward, transparent, and allow things to move forward. It's been at least 2 years. And it's sad that they're withholding it. The other statement that she makes is that she's building the trust of the SARA volunteers. How does she know that? Unless you actually measure that, you don't know what's going on. So I would encourage both the British Columbia Search and Rescue Association and the ministry to do a survey. Put out like a public opinion poll. It would be easy. BCSARA has the tools to do it. Ask a couple questions on a scale of 1 to 10. How much do you trust EMCR? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you trust BCSARA? Find out. And if it's a low score, there's your base point. And that's where you need to work. You have to earn trust. And once you've lost trust, you can't just simply make a couple of changes and say you've gained it. It takes a lot of work and a long time to gain trust. I would encourage them to find out where their score is at and then do the work it takes to regain that trust.
And that's a public survey you're talking about?
It would be a simple survey. You could use something like SurveyMonkey. BCSARA has that tool.
Okay.
They could survey the membership and quickly and easily find out how the membership feels about both organizations. And then they would both understand how much work there is to gain that trust back.
Right, so I think you've identified a couple of pretty concrete actions that could be taken to help resolve this. First of all, you're asking for release of those audit reports and the audit findings. Yep. And then secondly, a survey where we can take a look at the trust levels that are out there now for the EMCR as well as for BCSARA. So, I thank you for coming back in again, and hopefully we can carry on and continue this until it comes to resolution. So we will reach back out to Minister Ma's office and just see if we can make some progress or if they have a response to some of these requested actions.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming back in, Dwight, and thank you again for all the wonderful work that you've done in the past. I know you've been involved for many, many years in search and rescue.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. This is We've Got Issues, and we've been speaking with Dwight Yochim, who was the former CEO of BCSARA and has been involved for many, many years in Coquitlam Search and Rescue.